This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to the briefing. We are diving into a heavy slate of legal updates and breaking crime news from across the country to keep you informed on the cases making headlines today.
An LAPD officer testifies about a teenager's tragic death.
A missing Texas mother's remains are found decades later.
An Indiana man receives 62 years for roommate murder.
A cheating prank leads to a dangerous highway shooting.
A Nebraska man faces death for a quadruple homicide.
An Illinois man is charged with butchering his mother.
Texas deputies find a couple murdered by their stepdaughter.
A Georgia mother is jailed after children ate insects.
Starting in Los Angeles, the wrongful death trial regarding the tragic killing of 14-year-old Valentina Orellana-Peralta has reached a critical stage as the officer who fired the fatal shot took the stand. In December 2021, Valentina was trying on Christmas dresses at a Burlington store in North Hollywood when she was struck by a bullet that traveled through a dressing room wall. LAPD officer William Dorsey Jones Jr. testified this week explaining that he believed he was responding to an active shooter situation. However, the reality was that the suspect, Daniel Elena Lopez, was armed only with a heavy bike lock, which he had been using to attack shoppers. The family's attorney, Nick Rowley, pointedly remarked that you don't bring an AR-15 to a bike lock fight, highlighting the perceived excessive force used by the officer during the chaotic encounter.
The testimony from Officer Jones revealed his mindset during the incident, as he claimed the totality of the information he gathered led him to believe deadly force was necessary. Yet, the prosecution and the family's legal team countered this by noting that a senior officer had already broadcasted that the suspect was only armed with a bike lock. This discrepancy is central to the trial, especially given the conflicting internal reviews from the LAPD. While the police commission ruled only one of Jones's 3 shots was justified, the former chief of police found all 3 shots to be unjustified. The emotional weight of the case is immense, as Valentina's mother described the horrific moment her daughter went limp in her arms. The jury must now decide if the officer's actions constituted negligence or a reasonable response to a perceived threat.
Now to Texas. After more than 25 years of uncertainty, the remains of Kimberly Langwell have finally been discovered in a hidden grave in Beaumont, Texas. Kim disappeared in July 1999 after failing to return home to her 15-year-old daughter, Tiffany. Her car was found abandoned in a pharmacy parking lot with her purse and keys missing, leading investigators to believe she had been kidnapped. For decades, the lead detective on the case, Joe Ball, was haunted by his inability to find her, feeling as though he had failed both Kim and her grieving family. The breakthrough finally came through a recent tip that led authorities to a specific location where her body had been concealed for over 2 decades. This discovery brings a somber end to one of the region's most enduring and painful missing persons mysteries.
The investigation originally focused on those closest to Kim, including her boyfriend at the time, Ken Weatherford, who was the one to report finding her car. Despite the initial suspicions, the case went cold for years, as no physical evidence of her whereabouts could be found. Kim's daughter, Tiffany, and her sister, Susan, never gave up hope for answers, describing Kim as an amazing mother who would never have voluntarily abandoned her child. The emotional toll on the Beaumont community has been significant, and the recent recovery of her remains is now shifting the focus toward a potential criminal prosecution. While the discovery provides a sense of closure, it also reopens the wounds of a family that has spent half a lifetime wondering what happened to their loved one on that summer night in 1999.
Next, in Indiana. In Indianapolis, 54-year-old James Gross-Nickel has been sentenced to 62 years in prison for the brutal murder of his roommate, Craig Esmond Jacobs. The crime, which occurred in September 2024, involved Gross-Nickel shooting Jacobs multiple times in the face and then locking the body inside the victim's own bedroom for several days. Friends of the victim became concerned when Jacobs went missing and eventually broke down the bedroom door to find the gruesome scene. During the trial, witnesses testified that Gross-Nickel had made disturbing comments about shooting Jacobs and even threatened to send body parts to the victim's family. The severity of the sentence reflects the calculated and callous nature of the killing, as well as Gross-Nickel's status as a serious violent felon in possession of a firearm, ensuring he will likely spend the remainder of his life behind bars.
The details revealed in court were particularly chilling, as Grossnickel attempted to hide the truth from those looking for Jacobs. He reportedly told visitors that Jacobs was in a bad mood and should not be disturbed, all while the victim's body lay just feet away. Prosecutor Ryan Mears emphasized that the jury saw through these lies, and the court's sentence serves as a necessary response to the weight of the crimes committed. The investigation was aided by witnesses who recalled Grossnickel's erratic behavior and the specific threats he made prior to the discovery of the body. This case highlights the tragic outcome of a domestic dispute turned deadly, and the swift action taken by the Marion County legal system to hold the perpetrator accountable for a murder that shocked the local neighborhood on South Gray Street.
Moving to North Carolina. A dangerous situation unfolded in Charlotte when a woman's attempt to prank her boyfriend went horribly wrong. The woman and her friends decided to trick 20-year-old shy-eyed Ivy into thinking she was cheating on him by having a male friend call him. Ivy, who was able to track his girlfriend's location via her phone, did not take the joke lightly. He followed the group's car in his own vehicle, driving recklessly and eventually firing shots into their car at an intersection. Fortunately, no one was physically injured, but the incident led to Ivy being charged with 5 counts of assault with a deadly weapon with intent to kill. This case serves as a stark reminder of how quickly a misguided prank can escalate into a life-threatening criminal event, especially when firearms and domestic volatility are involved.
The legal consequences for Ivy are severe, as he is also facing charges for discharging a weapon into an occupied vehicle and possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. Traffic camera footage captured the moment of the shooting, showing 3 bright bursts from Ivy's car that shattered the glass of the victim's vehicle. The male friend who participated in the prank also received a threatening text from Ivy shortly after the incident, telling him to stop playing around. Ivy was booked into the Mecklenburg County Detention Center and is scheduled for a court appearance later this month. This story illustrates the extreme risks of using location tracking apps in high-tension relationships and the potential for violence when emotions are manipulated, even in jest. The Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department's quick use of surveillance technology was instrumental in confirming the details of the assault.
Now to Nebraska. Jason Jones has been sentenced to death for a horrific quadruple murder that took place in the small town of Laurel, Nebraska. The killings occurred in August 2022 and were reportedly carried out at the behest of his wife, Carrie Jones. The victims included their neighbors, the Twyford family, and Michelle Ebeling. Carrie had long complained to her husband about verbal harassment from 86-year-old Jean Twyford, eventually telling Jason to deal with him or she would do it herself. On the night of the murders, Jason broke into the Twyford home, killed 3 family members, and set the house on fire before moving on to kill Ebeling. The 3-judge panel that handed down the death sentence described the crimes as exceptionally depraved and cruel, noting that the violence extended far beyond the initial target of his wife's grievances.
The trial revealed a deeply troubled domestic dynamic, with Jason describing his wife as a very difficult woman who had threatened him with weapons to coerce the violence. Carrie Jones was previously sentenced to life in prison for her role in the murders, but the court determined that Jason's direct actions warranted the ultimate penalty. The investigation confirmed that while Jean Twyford had a reputation for being difficult, the response from the Joneses was a catastrophic overreaction that devastated multiple families. Jason Jones himself suffered severe burns during the arson attacks, which eventually helped lead police to him. Nebraska Attorney General Mike Hilgers praised the court's decision, stating that the death penalty was the only appropriate sentence for such a calculated and brutal series of homicides that shattered the peace of a tiny, tight-knit community like Laurel.
Shifting to Illinois. In a disturbing case out of Chicago, 66-year-old Kevin Works is accused of murdering his 88-year-old mother, Danielle Graves, and hiding her body in her own basement. The incident began in late March, when Graves failed to send her customary morning prayer text, sparking immediate concern among her family members. When her sister visited the home, Works refused to let her in, appearing startled. Police eventually discovered that Works had traded his mother's car for drugs shortly after her disappearance. After obtaining a search warrant, investigators found Graves' body hidden behind a bookcase in the basement, along with evidence of a violent struggle in her bedroom. The discovery of blood, bleach, and weapons like a folding knife and brass knuckles suggests a brutal attack followed by a desperate attempt to conceal the crime and the resulting odor.
The evidence against Works is substantial, including ring surveillance footage that shows his mother never left the house after returning from a shopping trip. Her purse and wallet were found discarded in a garbage can, further indicating she had no intention of leaving. Works allegedly lied to officers, claiming his mother had gone to work even though her phone remained in the house. The community and her church family are mourning the loss of a woman described as deeply religious and consistent in her habits. Works now faces charges of first-degree murder and concealing a death. This case highlights a tragic betrayal of trust within a family and the diligent work of the Chicago Police Department in following the trail of a missing person that led to a gruesome discovery within the victim's own home.
Back to Texas. A shocking double homicide in Meco, Texas, has led to the arrest of 29-year-old Cassandra Lang and her partner, Joby Williams. The pair is accused of killing Lang's mother, Cherry Rebine, and her stepfather, Stephen Rebine. Authorities believe the couple first murdered Cherry at her home and then waited for Stephen to return from work before killing him as well. The bodies were then disposed of in a deep ravine near Medina Lake. The crime came to light after Stephen failed to show up for work, prompting a welfare check that revealed bloody items in a trash can outside the residence. Lang and Williams were eventually apprehended over 2 hours away in Corpus Christi, traveling with 2 young children in a vehicle belonging to the victims. Lang has reportedly confessed to the murders during police interviews.
The details of the disposal were particularly grim, as deputies had to navigate a challenging search at night to recover 2 large black garbage bags containing the remains. The motive for the killings remains under investigation, but the cold-blooded nature of waiting for the second victim to arrive home has led to capital murder charges. The 2 children found with the suspects, a 6-year-old and a 1-month-old, are now in the care of family and state workers. Both Lang and Williams are being held on $1 million bonds as the legal process moves forward. This case has stunned the small community of Meco, as neighbors grapple with the reality of a daughter allegedly orchestrating the deaths of her own parents. The Medina County Sheriff's Office continues to process evidence from the home and the ravine to build their case.
Finally, in Georgia, a heartbreaking case of child neglect has emerged from Douglasville, Georgia, where 37-year-old Sherry Magby is facing charges of cruelty to children and aggravated assault. Police were called to her home and found 6 children, ranging in age from 1 to 10, living in squalid and unsanitary conditions. The 10-year-old told officers he had been left in charge of his 5 younger siblings for 12 hours without any food. In a desperate attempt to survive, the children were reportedly seen eating cockroaches and ants. Tragically, the 1-year-old child later passed away, though the official cause of death is still being processed by the coroner's office. The home was described as being in a state of significant disorder, with a strong foul odor, highlighting a complete failure of parental supervision and care for the vulnerable children involved.
This is not Magby's first encounter with the law, as she was already awaiting trial for a separate aggravated assault case involving a knife attack from the previous year. She is currently being held without bond in the Douglas County Jail as investigators continue to piece together the timeline of neglect. The community has expressed outrage over the conditions the children were forced to endure, especially the detail regarding the consumption of insects due to a lack of nourishment. The death of the infant has elevated the severity of the situation, and further charges may be pending as the investigation concludes. This story serves as a grim reminder of the critical importance of child welfare interventions and the devastating consequences when the most basic needs of children are ignored by those responsible for their safety and well-being.
That concludes our daily briefing. Thank you for joining us. Please follow the show for your next update on the stories that matter most. We will see you back here tomorrow.